Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you joining me here. My name is Crair. I'm with the Digital Workshop Center. So let's just kind of start from the top. I think some of you already know who we are, but for those that are joining us from the general public, Digital Workshop Center, we've been an occupational school for the last 15 years. We're based in Colorado, where we work in 12 different states across the US. And our mission really for all of our students is to empower you with skills, not degrees. It's kind of our saying that we use all the time. And we do this in a creative way. We're looking at our programs as kind of like a boot camp style of training. And we balance an accelerated pace of training with small class sizes, so you're able to really get a lot of hands-on attention from your instructors. Our classes are generally going to be online. They're included with support and mentoring every step of the way, and they're taught by experts in their respective fields, so that you're really learning from the people on the job who are doing this every day. Me personally, I'm one of the founder of Digital Workshop Center, one of the instructors here. I also been adjunct to Colorado State, and my background is very much in information systems and design. Currently, I do a lot of web design, a lot of graphic design. I do most of the design work for Digital Workshop, but I also do all the hiring, and I hire our instructors, I hire our staff, and I do the career counseling combined. And through all of that, I see a ton of resumes. I see a lot of what you should be doing and what you should not be doing. And I would say that everything I'm about to show you is to be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt, because there's no perfect resume, but we can certainly strive for best practices about how to get a best resume. Our programs here, you can look on our website. You can find a lot of information about who we are. We have 9 certificate programs that are currently available. We have over 60 standalone classes that are currently available. We do employment and wage reports with every graduate, and we have a great track record of helping students get back to work. Our model of training is one of many, but we have found this to be a great success over the last 15 years. And we try to give you all the components to be empowered, and then take what you learn and apply it to your situation. So we don't do any job placement, but we do everything from the training to career counseling to preparing you in terms of your resume and job search. And these are the kind of stats that we have seen really from our graduates. This is from our last 2-year exit poll in our employment and wage reports, seeing over 80% of our students finding employment and a $12,000 increase in salary. So we just really encourage you to take advantage of all of the services that are offered, including these free workshops and the career counseling that I'm also a part of. And for the other benefits of our program, we do have things like our capstone projects and support available too. Last slide, just about us. We currently do have 2 new scholarships that are available. We have some different ways to pay for your school, but we just want to spread the word to you all and encourage you to share this with others, that we currently have a Tech Skills Scholarship and a Women in Tech Scholarship, which is brand new. The Tech Skills Scholarship is for those that are unemployed and looking to get back to work. And you can receive between 25 to 100%, which is usually about $1,000 to $5,000 in funding. And the Women in Tech, which is brand new, is $50,000 of available funding. That is for any women who are looking to advance or pursue a career in technology. And it's a new application for that. It's available. You do need to meet with a student advisor in order to get that application. But we will happily share that out as well if you've kind of gone to that RSVP link. So please go ahead and fill that out. And that link again is in the chat for those who are just joining us. So if you are just coming into the meeting, please go ahead and go to the RSVP, fill that out, and then we'll be sending all this information to those after. Okay, so enough about us. Let's talk about what we're here to learn here today. So first of all, in the Digital Workshop, we live and work in a skills-based world. And probably 15, 20 years ago, there was really this big push away from employers who are hiring to be looking solely for degree credentials, to start basing their hires on skills. And now there's some international foundations and US nonprofits that are very much involved in the skills-based hiring world. There's one called Skillful, that's one through the Markle Foundation, which is part of LinkedIn. And the world of hiring continues to shift. And when you look at some of the most successful people in the world, the Bill Gateses and the Steve Jobses of the world, they actually didn't even go to college. They didn't even, in some cases, ever get any kind of advanced secondary diploma or anything like that. They had the skills. They also happened to be in the right place at the right time, but they had the skills that really brought them to the forefront of their respective field. And so that has really trickled down to institutions like us, where we're trying to prepare you with the job-ready skills, and people are trying to hire based on skills more than ever before. And there are studies over and over again that reinforce this point around that skills-based hiring is just as effective of hiring based on a four-year degree. So our programs are very much modeled around that. And these are some great studies here that you can click on, and when you get the presentation, you'll be able to take a look at that. That really reinforce that kind of point. In general, when we talk about skills, the most desirable skills out there are tech skills. People want to see that you are up to date on your technology. Now, just using video conferencing for this kind of meeting, that's something that wasn't as prevalent even just a few years ago, right? The pandemic has shifted all of our mentality around skills. And this has become almost a required skill to be able to manage these types of meetings. But many different types of technology skills continue to kind of push the forefront in the pace of change within the workforce. So for those who are building your resume and crafting how you're going to start your story, the first thing I would really encourage you to think about is how are you going to highlight the skills that are going to align to the positions that you're going after. Okay, so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind here for just a second. Our job is to help you and all of our students and all of our counselors we work with to really rethink the pipeline of training and pipeline of candidates that are coming out of schools like us and going into the workforce. And so I like doing these kinds of presentations and counseling with students. And that's something I really enjoy because it gives me an opportunity to help you rethink your resume and make sure that you're thinking properly about how it's going to be received. Okay, so 67% of the US doesn't have a four-year degree. That is not going to be as preventative as it might have been in the past. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's think about being in the role of a hiring manager. So if you are on the opposite end of receiving this resume, most, 83% here of surveyed hiring managers say that skills are much more important than a background. That whole concept helps hiring managers overlook a lot of these barriers that may have been there before. So if you're in that position, what are the things that you're going to be looking for to hire for that specific job posting that you're putting out there? How can you align your job skills to what the hiring manager is looking for? Now leads us to thinking about how can you now create the best winning resume possible. Okay, so let's first of all just break down some really simple definitions. Okay, some of this may be oversimplified, but for those of you who have not thought about this, really, what's the title and the role of a resume? First of all, okay, so the resume is a summary of your career. The resume is a concise single-page document that will almost be the business card of your professional life. So if you were to go to a networking meeting and you had a business card, you were to hand it to someone, that gives someone a summary of who you are, your title, your contact information, right? It's just a great way to introduce yourself. A resume is essentially an extension of that to someone who doesn't know you at all and summarizing why you're a qualified candidate, again, in a very concise way. Your highlights are typically around your past and current jobs and your responsibilities. There are many other things that may be appropriate on a certain resume, but overwhelmingly, your job here is to align to what that hiring manager we just talked about is looking for with what past and current responsibilities you have, and how are you going to connect those dots? That needs to be plain and simple, easy for them to understand. So we're going to talk more about some ways to do that here in just a second. But maybe even more importantly, because we're in a competitive job market world these days, and because you are trying to stand out, this resume is an opportunity for you to tailor your story to the role or to the company. And so you need to take that opportunity and think about every single time you submit a resume, you have this one chance to turn in who you are and tell your summary of your career. So you should take it, and you should avoid trying to use the same resume over and over and over, and take that opportunity to tailor the story of who you are and how it best fits with the company you're going after. Okay, so it is work. This is not just create a one-time template of a resume and then send it and you're done. But it's not, I think, a ton of work. It's worthwhile that you would do this in a way that would really benefit you and your career path here. Okay. So what do employers want to see on a resume? Really easy, simple questions here that you have to have answered. What did you do in the past? Why did you do it? And be able to explain yourself, again, in a nice, concise way. What was the results? Tangible, quantifiable results are huge. If you can say an example of maybe like digital marketing, where you were able to increase engagement by a certain percentage, or you were able to increase sales through some of your efforts in some situations, those are quantifiable numbers. That's huge, and that really kind of validates some of your work. When a hiring manager is looking at your resume, keep in mind that they're probably looking at hundreds of other resumes. And when it's a nationwide search and these are remote positions and all those kinds of things, I mean, you may be finding that you're in a very competitive environment. So in a general rule, these three questions on the screen, what did you do? Why did you do it? What was the result? They really need to be answered by someone skimming through your resume in under 10 seconds, which I know sounds ridiculous. You know, when we look at web pages and we do web page design, we generally say the average attention span of a web user, someone on a single web page, is 8 seconds or less. A goldfish has an attention span of 7 seconds. You know, so we're right on the par with a goldfish here in terms of paying attention to something for that ridiculously short amount of time. But in the case of a hiring manager, 10 seconds is like a nice industry rule to say, you better get your story across quickly. Okay, so that's not a lot of time. So when we want to answer these questions and we want to tell our story, we also have to be very conscious of someone skimming through and the methods of how they're going to skim through this to get what they want so they can find if you're a good candidate. So you're trying to paint a picture here of you know, what kind of candidate you are, and really a lot of your story is going to happen in the full interview itself. This, again, think about the resume as almost like an advanced business card of who you are. So you're trying to get in front of this person, you're trying to attract enough of their attention to say, I'm qualified, I've got great experience, I've got great education, whatever else you've got on there. And you've got a lot more to tell to your story, but you want to just give enough for them to be interested, get in that interview. That's where you can now start to tell your full story, even more so, okay? So to get started, I think sometimes we almost like reverse engineer this whole process just a little bit. The best way, and I do this with anyone, if you're going to set up a career counseling appointment with me, if you're a student here, this is one of the first things I'm going to ask you is, tell me the exact job postings you're going after. I don't want to ever hear, you know, kind of broad generalizations. I want to hear, I found these 5 job postings on Indeed and LinkedIn. They're exactly what I want to do. Here's why I'm qualified. This is what I'm going after. Okay, now I know what you may or may not have on your resume that exactly targets that position. So you need to know that up front. That needs to be something that you're really confident about. On your resume, you need to be using keywords that match the posting. For example, if a posting is asking you for a business, for an administrative assistant position, they're saying that you need to have Microsoft Excel advanced skills. Well, just those terms right there, Microsoft Excel and advanced, better show up on your resume somewhere. If they're asking for even more specific things, you need to be comfortable with Excel functions and Excel pivot tables. Those better show up on your resume somewhere. So you're trying to really align what you are confident and comfortable on the job doing with what they're asking for by the keyword. We'll talk more about the systems here in just a second of how that's even more important. With that in mind, you should have different resumes for different postings and different jobs that you're going after. If one job you're going after is administrative assistant, they're asking for Microsoft Excel skills, and the next job you're going after maybe is in customer service or something else, that's they're going to ask for very different kinds of skills. The same resume doesn't really include the same keywords there at that point. And probably a lot of overlap, a lot of similarities, but if you look at the job posting of job A and you look at job B, you probably want to make a few tweaks for the resume based off of each one. If you save these and you kind of organize them a little bit, then you can maybe reuse them over time. But you should really think about each resume you submit. Take a few minutes, review the job posting, review your keywords, make some tweaks, make some changes, then submit it, and you have generally a much better outlook on what you're going to see there in results. Because hiring managers are getting hundreds of resumes per posting, they're overwhelmed. And the general rule of thumb for your resume should be it is one page. Okay, so you can use the space wisely here. We'll look at a few examples that do this really well. But you need to use both the horizontal and vertical space to create the best possible looking resume that's easy to read, that's concise, that's well organized, but it has to be one page. And if you have more information that can fit on one page, then you really want to look at chronologically, what are your most recent experiences that are going to help you propel you towards that job, or what are the most directly connected experiences that are going to help you be a better candidate for that job. Lastly, on this slide here, know what makes you unique just a little bit. It's hard to do that sometimes when you're looking at hundreds of resumes. Everyone's going to start to kind of blend together a little bit. So nowadays, with the ease of creating using Microsoft Word, or if you're using design programs like Photoshop, you can include your picture on there. Nice small headshot, always a good idea if you have space. You could include some interests that sometimes set you apart just a little bit. Again, you have to be very conscious of the space that's available to you. So if you don't have enough space to talk about the more important experiences, then these interests need to be cut just for that reason alone. But if you can fit them in there, find something that can just make you a little bit unique. And so that's something that's always a little bit of a challenge. Okay, so I mentioned that keywords really drive everything here. Keywords on your resume need to be aligned to the keywords of the posting. But there's an even bigger reason why that's so important. Not only does that just align from a conceptual standpoint, behind the scenes for most large, let's say medium to large size companies, is something we call the ATS, which is an abbreviation for Applicant Tracking Systems. Okay, nowadays, resumes are submitted online. I think you all know that. Applicant tracking systems are the systems that filter through your resumes to identify, does your resume match with the keywords that this particular hiring company is even looking for? And in the case of Indeed, as someone who posts a job, I can put what we call deal breakers on there that say if you don't list that you have 5 years experience under a certain skill, or that you've listed a certain skill at all, or that you live in a certain location, all these kinds of different deal breakers, the applicant tracking system will immediately just take your resume off of the list. Okay, so you're fighting against a system, an algorithm that is going to weed you out before you even got a chance to talk to anybody, which seems wholly unfair. But that is the way of the world. That's the way that you're playing the game. So in order to be the best candidate, you need to identify the keywords that are going to align to what the applicant tracking systems are asking for. If you can confidently answer any of the questions that they're asking, then you have a chance to kind of weed through that and get to the point of even getting an interview. Applicant tracking systems are not forgiving. You know, it's a computer algorithm that's looking at it and saying, do you have this number of years? Have you stated that clearly on your resume? So that is kind of your first hurdle here. Now, and that's just in terms of getting your resume together. Now, in terms of what jobs you're even looking at, there's also a way to use these same applicant tracking systems to your advantage. Okay, now at the top, I was talking about skills-based hiring. The reason I bring that up for this particular presentation is because if you understand the skills-based hiring world that you're in, that you are trying to be a part of this, that you're trying to accentuate and highlight your skills for a particular posting, sometimes you can use those keywords and those skills to find jobs that you don't even know existed. So we're going to do a quick little experiment here, okay? And you can do this on your own after the presentation also. If I were in the job searching mode and I were looking for a graphic designer kind of role because I have skills in Adobe Photoshop, I might go to Indeed and I would search for graphic design. So real quick, I'm on Indeed. Okay, I hope you're all familiar with this. If not, you need to become more familiar. This is one of the primary sites people use nowadays for hiring. Indeed is a very simple, easy platform. If I come up here and I do that example, what I just said, graphic design, graphic designer, excuse me, that's the title. That's what I would know. If I had taken the graphic design program at Digital Workshop Center, or I had a graphic design degree even, wouldn't matter. I might come in here and I'd look all across Colorado, as you can see here, and I would go search and say, I'm looking for a graphic designer role. And notice how there's 99 positions out there across the state. That's not that much, not that many really. If you start to dig into these particular positions, what you'll find is that Photoshop will be in almost every single one of these. Okay, it's going to ask you for it over and over in terms of using Adobe Suite. You know, and that's something that's a part of Photoshop is a part of. So sometimes they may list it out a little bit differently. Let's look at now, if I change the way that I actually search to looking by skill, and I'm looking for my posting based off of one particular skill, like Photoshop. Look how the number immediately triples in terms of opportunities that are out there. I take it even broader, and I look at Adobe, which is the parent company of that. Well, that one didn't have a very good result, but I could do Adobe Photoshop. You can see, well, it was about the same for 333. Point being that it's a skills-based hiring method of some of these postings may show up, you know, as a interesting title, like right there, producer, you know, that's something I may or may not be familiar with if I was the one job searching. So to come back to this just for a second, the idea of the applicant tracking system is that it's only as smart as whatever that hiring manager is searching for. So you need to align your keywords to the role, to the industry as best as possible, so that you're the best candidate and that you're also job searching in the best way possible. Today, you know, you can see that stat there that almost every single large company uses an ATS of some kind. I would say that most medium-sized companies use them, and even most small businesses now are using them because posting on Indeed is so easy. There's a free option, there's a paid option for as an employer. So it's a pretty common thing these days, and it's just kind of hard to avoid. There's no more turning in your resume and walking in the door. There's no more mailing it in. I mean, it's all done digitally, and then these systems kind of kick in to weed through some of what you've sent. Okay, so as I said at the top, if you have any questions on any of this, please just drop them into the chat. I know Allie's monitoring the chat here, and she's got the forum that's posted. So if you have any questions throughout all of this, feel free to drop them in there, and I'll definitely monitor that and get to them as we go. Okay, so I know that's a lot of information so far. Let's think and come back to the resume just for a second here. What should be on your resume? Okay, well, some basic information. Someone's got to be able to get in touch with you. When I say basic contact info, though, again, think digitally. Even your mailing address is honestly not that important anymore. A phone number and an email, and maybe your LinkedIn profile, because that's often a very good synopsis of who you are. Those are the modern ways to get in touch with someone. So that's your basic info. Your professional experience is by far the most important. If you have any volunteer or related experience, only if relevant to the job, those are important. Your education is absolutely essential. And then any other skills or interests, which gives you an opportunity to add more keywords, like I was just talking about. So that's key too. Let's just look at this as a very basic template of a resume, just for a second. Now, the design of it is not that exciting. I think design is important too, but just in terms of structure, it's kind of following a standard flow. Now, there are times where you want to set yourself apart from the pack by the way in which you organized your content. However, in general, this flow of information is going to help a hiring manager because it's consistent. It's what other people have done. And not that you always want to follow the pack, but you do want to lay it out in a way that's just easy for a hiring manager to digest. So if you've gotten through the applicant tracking systems, you've gotten your resume in front of the right people, they're skimming it. Remember the 10-second rule. They're skimming through this really quickly. So they're trying to figure out, okay, who are you and what's your background? So after your basic contact information at the top, we then talk about a summary or an objective. Now, to me, that is very much an optional section. And the reason here is, if it adds more to your story, then I would say go ahead and put it in there. Meaning that in your experiences, you're describing yourself. And if you're not able to get all of your experiences in there in a way that are going to capture what you want to tell this employer about yourself, then a really short 1-sentence or 2-sentence objective or summary is okay. But if you're repeating yourself and it's the same information that's showing up down below, you're just wasting space. And I would much rather you use that space below to have your experiences be more clear, to add to your other interests or hobbies, to make you more unique. That is what sets you apart. So what I see all the time is on these resume statements, you're just saying the exact same things that happen to be said down below. And if that's what you're doing, I would just encourage you to get rid of it. Save that space. Think about, if someone's on the receiving end of it, they don't want to take the time to read that. And then if you're repeating yourself, they probably are only going to read one or the other. So which version of it would you want them to read? And I'd rather they read the professional experience version, which is probably more detailed in general. So if you write it, keep it concise. It's almost like a tagline about yourself, how you're selling yourself a little bit, but don't think of that as a required piece. The structure here, if you're going to write it, will be kind of following this type of templates. That you're merging a background in ABC, you've helped companies improve XYZ through 1, 2, 3. I don't know, it's very generic, but you can read the one below here as I'm talking. That helps people see maybe the collaboration of multiple different experiences coming together. So again, you worked 3 different positions, you've been across a varying wide range of skills in the past. So now in your summary statement, you're explaining how you could bring all that together to be a great candidate to then come to this position and why your combination of skills makes you unique. So that could be a really good use of that if you're going to do it. Okay, now beyond that, we look at the organization of this as is really key. So in this particular example, there's no summary statement. Notice that up top. And what we really want to do is organize this content in a consistent way, just simple indentation, simple bold, and a little larger font size when necessary. We want to make it easy to read. So consistently indenting our actual experiences here really helps someone to pick out what they're able to see. So that alignment piece is huge. And even the most subtle little shift of alignments, a couple spaces in or out, makes a big difference. Again, it's just, I'm reading straight down a line. You want it to be really perfect there for someone to be able to understand. Make it easy on them, and think about, again, experience as being the most important. aspect of what you're explaining here. And so we kind of hone in on this section here next. In the experience, you're thinking about how you're describing the past experiences of what you did on the job. So the first word of every experience should be an action verb, and it should be written in past tense. So you want to write it in a way that is easy for someone to look at, and just by reading the first word, they understand what kind of actions you could take if you were hired on the job for them. So again, your job is to correlate between what have you done in the past, what are you going to bring to the table as value to this company today. So if I was skimming, following the 10 seconds rule as a hiring manager, just by reading this, I would pick out 5 key actions real quickly and say, you know what, those are things I'm looking for. Okay, maybe I'll read a little bit more and maybe I'm drawn in. Or maybe simply enough, I just want to talk to this person. Let me have them explain themselves in an interview. So that experience is the most important thing. It should be in chronological order from your most recent experience to your oldest. If you have too many experiences that you can't fit it on one page anymore, then you're going to pick and choose which ones are the most relevant to your job posting that you're going after. So a lot of times, I may say, go ahead and create the full resume, which may end up being several pages once you put all your experiences in there, if you have that many. Then create these, and we'll call that kind of like a draft version. Then we create these final versions that are really ready to be submitted, that are one page, and that you've kind of pick and choose which ones are the right experiences for the job you're going after. If there's a gap in employment, so sometimes people get concerned about that, saying, hey, well, this shows, this experience makes it look like I wasn't working. I think that's okay, because all that's going to be is a conversation you're going to have with that employer and to say, well, what happened in these 4 years? Oh, I was working, but it wasn't relevant to this job, so I didn't include it. Let me tell you about it. Okay, so I don't think the gap in experience is nearly as big a problem as aligning the experience to the actual role, which is the most important thing. 3 to 4 bullets under each experience is going to be a pretty good guideline. Not a steadfast rule by any means. You're writing these in concise, short sentences. Sometimes describe it as kind of like text style writing, where you need to be clear and concise, but you don't need to write out a full, well-written sentence every single time. And if you can keep everything to 1 line per bullet, then you just get more lines that you can write overall. But again, that's not always possible. So keep it short, keep it concise. And if it's interesting and you've written in a way that aligns skills to the job posting in an interesting way, that talks about a project that's really interesting, that talks about the use of technology that was really interesting, you're going to catch someone's attention. That's what's going to get you an interview. Then you can expand upon it and you can say, hey, at this project, I did use these skills. Let me tell you about what I did and how I can do that for you. Right? It's all about kind of tying it back to the job you're going after. So you're using these as almost like teasers. Each bullet here is a teaser of the action you took and why you did a good job with it. Okay. I'm just going to pause there because that is one of the most important parts of the whole presentation, is talking about the experience piece. Does anybody have any questions that they want to throw in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you want to ask it now. Feeling pretty good? All right, I'll take that as a good sign that you're absorbing everything I'm telling you. I know it's a lot of information, so hopefully you're taking some notes. And again, this will be available later for those who may have not heard that at the beginning. Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I have a question about the actual resume. I noticed that on this particular style or format of resume, there's quite a bit of white space. And I've been told that you really want to expand your resume and utilize that white space so that you can get as much information out there as possible. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you have to just use the white space wisely. So if you can get your message across in the vertical way here in a way that's nice and indented and organized while still saying what you want to say, then you have this opportunity for more design, a little more indentation, a little more alignment, that kind of thing. But if you have a lot of experience, you have a lot to tell, then yeah, you need to use the horizontal space better. And like these kinds of situations where you see like these lines are wrapping to two lines, you need to get that to one line by making that below wider. So I think it's kind of subjective to the resume and how much content you have. But at the end of the day, the absolute rule is it needs to stay at one page. So you need to make tweaks to the design overall to make sure it fits to one page, no matter what that takes. And that's the key.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, it's a good question. Okay. So again, just to summarize there, every sentence should begin with that verb that we talked about. Okay, let's look at a different one. So here's a different resume altogether. Maybe Mia, kind of to your question, maybe just a little bit. You know, I noticed a totally different alignment, right? A little more content. He's got a lot more project type of work, which is often difficult to convey to people. But in this case, he's coming from more of a film background, so he's really keeping it simple up at the top, very clean and easy to read. The alignment is just nice and flush, but those experiences, just highlighted with just the simplest little bit of color. White space, maybe used a little more effectively in terms of vertical, so he's got a little more horizontal space to play with. And then the skills at the bottom are just a simple list. And again, that's strictly to get through to those applicant tracking systems so that they're picking up some of those words that maybe don't show up in the experience up above, or maybe are just like very important technical skills that he's highlighting in this case, and doing it in a way, especially given the type of roles this job he might be going after. So it's important that he's doing that. Here's another very different one. Obviously, a very different take on what a resume should look like. I talked about standing out from the pack. This is actually one of our instructors here. And he does a wonderful job of being completely unique and different. Now, if you compare the two, look at the last one and look at this one. They're a little different in terms of where your eyes go, right? It's a little harder to follow along on this one in some ways. However, look at the kind of jobs that he's trying to get. He's a designer. He's a visual designer. Well, doesn't it make a lot of sense for a visual designer to create an interesting visual design for someone to be able to see your work? And doesn't the actual logo work show off your portfolio that much more? So it's a really smart way in the end to make yourself stand out and let people see how you are aligned to that position by the work. Again, it's a very unique take on a resume. I'm not suggesting this for everyone by any means, but it's just kind of getting you thinking that there's no real one perfect way to do it. And kind of back to your question again, Mia, you can do this however you want that makes sense. It's going to fit the one page. It's just about making sure you have all those keywords along with those skills, experiences, everything else on there. So at the end of the day, what that really means is, feel empowered to customize this for a role or an industry. There really shouldn't be a template that you follow and say, this is how resumes have to look. In fact, I would argue that's not a good thing at all. So the more you want to research and just kind of experiment with it, I think the more opportunities you'll find to create something interesting. But you always want to balance, the design that goes with the content. The content is king. It's going to be what's going to drive those applicant tracking systems to find you. So you want to make sure it's clear and it's legible. But you can have some fun with it too. There's always that opportunity. Laura asked, how does that design work with ATS? Truthfully, it's not going to work nearly as good as the other ones. But notice that there are some key terms on here: graphic design, illustration, print, web. Some of the key words like Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign for this particular design resume, they're on there, but it's definitely not as text heavy. And text is what is being really searched by the applicant tracking systems. So that's a great question, because this probably isn't as friendly to those. But if you were getting in front of a graphic design or manager or a design director, creative director, someone might want to see that kind of design in your work so that you could stand out just a little bit. Okay, so as we kind of get to the end here, and I want to leave some time for extra questions too. The last thing I would leave you with is, as you get your resume looking in a way that you feel is not presentable to employers, this should not be the end of the story. I said at the top, you can really think about that you're constantly working on this to align your resume to employers. And we also talked about maybe creating a longer version of your resume and then narrowing it down per position you're applying for. But pretend and always keep putting yourself that you're in the position of receiving the resume. Hopefully you've done that research and you know what the job is looking for. So if you were receiving hundreds of resumes, what would you want to look at? And what would you want to stick out as terms of your particular resume? On your resume, where are your eyes going first? If you're the hiring manager, where would you want the hiring manager's eyes to go first? And again, just by simple alignment, color, really minor tweaks here, you can control that just a little bit. If you were hiring, what would you be looking for? And is there anything that you're missing? Again, it could be something that about the company. If you do a little research on the company and say, they look like, maybe they're hiring for these kinds of industries and these kinds of positions, I want to know more about them. Then that might give you some clues on things that could be helpful to include in that. Whatever you think is most important, find a way to kind of push it up towards the top. Usually that's the experiences we're talking about, but push that up in your resume or find some way to emphasize it. And it could just be as simple as adding color, adding a bold, something, but everything shouldn't be bold. How are you going to align your one emphasized point to what someone is hiring for? So again, just to kind of come back to this a little bit, it's important that even in just the most minor ways possible, we're just increasing font size, we're adding indentation, we're desaturating something that's less important by something that is more important. And I know that seems really minor and subtle, but it is just to make that position or the company, I should say, a little bit bigger, to make the title, again, kind of following this hierarchical way. It gives structure and organization to what I'm reading, and then allows me to understand it and interact with it that much more. So dig into those job postings. Does your resume reflect the experiences that they're looking for? You never, ever want to lie on a resume because you'll get caught in that lie real fast. But can you say and frame yourself, say things about yourself and frame yourself in a way that aligns to what they're looking for better? And this should really be something that you constantly revisit, okay? It's not that you're trying to be deceptive, but can you spin it in a way that makes it clear that you're capable of doing that job? And if you know you are, and you're confident in that, and you know that you can do it, how can you describe yourself in a better way that it was going to align yourself to the job? And if you've had some, if you made some postings, you're not getting the response you want, that should also be a little indicator like, okay, maybe I need to say this differently. I'm not using some of the right words. And so you need to maybe try more things and treat it like a living document. So, we say that all the time. The idea of a living document is that it's not set in stone. You can't just make it once and turn it in and expect it just to be accepted and you go on your merry way. You've got to refine it and edit it and refine it and edit it on and on until you've got that job you want. And honestly, even if you land a job, but it's still not the one you want, you should still come back to this and keep refining it, adding your latest experience, adding your latest skills, make it a living document and stay up to date on it. And it'll just be that much easier when you're ready to apply for a new position at any time. If you're not getting those callbacks, review the words, maybe try a different layout, try different fonts even. I mean, any little minor tweak goes a long way here. And if you're truly not getting the results you want at all, don't be afraid to just make wholesale changes. The content may be great, but in terms of what you're looking at, but maybe when someone else is reading it, it's just not landing. It's just not coming through. So that's where, meeting with a career counselor at DWC, if you're a student here, or, just looking for a different template, getting some other eyes on it, it's really helpful just to kind of maybe see what's right in front of you that you're missing. So kind of wrapping up here, if you are a student at DWC, please keep in mind that, we do these career coaching sessions for you as a part of your program. And I still do a lot of them. So you will meet and do a resume review. We will really fine tune that and go through all these similar tactics to make sure it looks as good as possible before you start applying. We will also do a job search review where you're doing, what I was showing you on Indeed. We'll go through that together and make sure you're applying for the right kinds of positions that you're actually a good candidate for. Your local workforce center, where no matter where you are in the U.S., there's a county workforce that does have some of these available too. So you can always lean on them. If you want to find more resume workshops and employment workshops, those kinds of things. And I would just point you back to LinkedIn too. I mean, there's so much information there about resumes, tips, articles. And we are always creating new blog posts on our blog and putting that information out there too. So you can stay tuned to that if you're not already. So, we kind of come to the end here. Amber, that's a great suggestion. I just saw that. You should check out the career services in your college. If you're at a university that may be eligible. Does anyone else have any questions here as we kind of get towards the end of this workshop?
Hey, Stu, I have a question that I hope will be beneficial for the group to hear, but is it ever okay to list your work experiences out of order? So say I'm applying for a job where maybe a previous job of mine, not my current role, but previously I had those skills and I wanted that to be kind of listed at the top because it's the most relevant experience. Is that okay?
In my opinion, traditionally, I would say no. I think the chronological order of your most recent experience connected to the job is important, and it also gives that kind of standardized order for someone who's reviewing it. I mean, I think there's exceptions to every rule. If it was something that was so clearly aligned to what it is you're hiring or you're applying for, then I would be okay with it. You might want to label it just a little bit and say, featured experience or, featured work experience, something like that. So it's clearly that you're trying to feature it and not list it in chronological order. I think if you take that extra step to do that, then you could definitely get away with that. But if it's just a list of experiences and they're all kind of jumbled and out of order, it might look like you did it by mistake. Anybody else?
Stu, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. This is James. I got a quick question for you. If you've got an education that's far and above what the job requires, do you consider, or would you consider the fact that you might want to leave that education off to make yourself not look unemployable, like you're overqualified for a position?
Overeducated. Yeah. I mean, that's a tough position to be in. If the job salary requirements are what you're looking for, and you feel that it is detrimental in terms of you listing out too much education, that a hiring manager might say, well, you've got so much education, I'm expecting to have to pay you more, or something like that, then yeah, I think actually it is okay to leave that out. I mean, in general, I would think education is one of the most important things to highlight because it does show a finished, completed program. So I really try not to as much as possible. But if you have come across that in the past and you're kind of getting that feedback, I think it's certainly fine to go ahead and do that.
Well, I've had that not only with the education, but also the age. I had one guy tell me, you sounded younger on the phone. It's like, well, all righty then.
Yeah, that's some ageism is always a little bit tough. I think, again, the ways you can get around that is to, maybe not go back quite as far in your experience, so that you're not highlighting things that highlight the age. And you try to really bring the focus just to the skills. So you can even drop the dates on some of your experiences. Again, that wouldn't be preferred, but if that's the pushback you're getting, make it all about the skills. Show them, look, I've got the skills, I've got the background. This is what I can bring to you.
I came in a little late, so I missed the chronology part. You're saying that it's always best to have dates associated with your jobs as well?
In general, yeah, you would list out like how long you were at a position because it shows some longevity. that you were there and committed to that employer for a while, which, you know, a new employer would be interested in too. So you would want to list your most recent work experience at the top of your experiences and then kind of work your way back. But you also want to, as I said earlier, kind of pick and choose a little bit about which experience is best aligned to the job. So you may not show all of them to make sure that you're highlighting the ones that are, you know, going to align you to getting the position.
You find that in this particular type of coursework at the digital workshop, because these courses are fairly quick and short, because a lot of companies are looking for people with experience. I mean, I've had experiences in the past where I've gone through an educational process and I haven't got any experience. And then when you get out in the real world, the only thing they're looking for is people with experience. Do you find that to be an issue with new graduates?
Well, I think you're touching on, you know, the most difficult thing of any educational scenario is when you leave the program, how do you get the experience? So I think what we start with all of our programs is just that capstone project at the end of each program is to at least be on the road towards starting your portfolio in some way. We would, in these career counseling meetings, talk about how other techniques of adding to that experience, whether it's reaching out to like local nonprofits or other businesses that you're connected with, your friends and family, to continue that. But you've got to find the ways and do the work to add to that experience piece in any way you can. So you're right that that is something that most employers will be looking for, but I do think there's ways to get that going if you just put in the work and really use what we've taught you as skills training to then take it and expand on that portfolio. I think a lot of times when the program ends, that's the beginning of the hard work. You know, you've got a little bit of a portfolio going. Now you got to really hustle and keep it going on your own.
So you're finding that people are looking for graduates from a school that they can train. So
yeah, for different, you know, it's subjective a little bit to the type of position we're talking about here, but the career field we're talking about, but some more than others. But I think most, if you're going for an entry level or junior level position, they want to see that you have education and some experience, and they're going to bring you in having both the soft and hard skills to be competent, and then they're going to continue to train you on the job.
Because some companies want to train you the way they want to train you. They don't want somebody that's got bad habits they bring into the job, right?
Well, it's true too. I mean, again, it's a little subjective to which kind of job we're talking about, but yeah, I mean, I think some have their own ways of doing things, but when we just talk about tangible hard skills, which is what our programs are really focused on, these are the skills that will get you hired. But then when you walk into a job, they're going to use it. He's going to use these skills one way that another employer may use them in a very different way. And so you do have to kind of learn the culture and the methods of how they're using those, so that it aligns to, you know, their teamwork and their way of doing it.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. These are good questions. And I noticed a couple of things in chat. Lori said, I noticed the number of years versus dates, showing how old you are. Yeah, and the same thing. I think you can get away from highlighting going back so far in terms of the year, and you can talk about being an employer for 3 years, or again, even it's maybe not preferred for me as much, but even leaving it off and making it a conversation starter in some ways. As they say, I see you worked at this company, I see you did all these things. How long were you there? Tell me about it. That can be a way to avoid the ageism, but still make sure it shows you're relevant.
Stu, do you have any tips for how to show accomplishments when you may not have like hard numbers to say, like, I accomplished this much increase in or in profits or something like that? What's another way to show accomplishments without having like qualitative numbers?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tough. Again, a little subjective to the position. So if you're in digital marketing, you've got more opportunities for qualitative numbers, right? You can say, I did social media for this project or for this company, and I saw the number of followers grow from 100 to 200. So you've got a, you know, X percentage increase. When you're talking about something like graphic design, I mean, it's unless you had sales figures that went along with it, I'm not sure you could talk in numbers really. But what you could talk about is productivity, maybe in terms of timeline that you were able to turn something around. talk about the efficiency that you would be working in. So highlighting maybe more of your statistics of how you would work for them, and thinking about like those kinds of ideas of productivity just a little bit more. I think of like positions like business administration. If you're managing even like an Excel spreadsheet that's got 10,000 rows in it and you're constantly updating this, I mean, just saying that you're able to manage a spreadsheet of that size, it's a qualitative something that kind of gives a little bit of a frame of reference to someone. But again, it's not something that would be all that important to me as a hiring manager to say, well, that's great, you worked in a large spreadsheet, but I want to know more about what did you do, and so I think that's really what. So you'd have to use those wisely based on the type of position. All right, everyone. Well, kind of come to the end of the hour here. I can't believe I actually hit it right on almost exactly an hour. That's amazing. So on the last couple slides here, there are a couple key links to some of our programs, and my contact information is here directly. If you haven't already, go back to chat and make sure you fill in that RSVP. Then we're going to send out this video to everyone who's on that list. We'll clean it up and make it available to you. So please reach out if you have any additional questions. But thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to having you in class and seeing you in some of these career coaching workshops here soon. But enjoy the rest of your day. And hopefully we'll talk to you here in a little bit.
Thank you.